pronouns she and her. Welcome to the grand finale. All the best.
It's like, I'll sorry, government team, you guys can start introducing yourself. You can mention your name, your preferred pronouns, and also you can mention your preferred was big PYs currently. And you can start starting with Prime Minister.
Okay, can you hear me? Hello, can I be heard?
Yeah, I just called it for introduction, not for start.
Okay. I'm Nicholas. I'm the Prime Minister, and pronouns he, him, and I'll take POIs verbally.
Fantastic. DPM.
Hello, my name is Emma. I'm the DPM, and I would be taking verbal POIs.
Go and go for it. Is Galvin here?
Oh, sorry, I can't hear. Hi, I'm Adriana. I go by the pronouns she, her, and I would like verbal POIs. Thank you.
Thank you. Opposition? Opposition?
Hi, I'm Elo, and I prefer verbal POIs.
Hi, I'm second speaker, any pronouns, and I prefer verbal POIs.
Hi, I'm Jordan. I'm the opposition whip. Any gender pronouns would vote for me. Verbal POIs, please. Good luck for the debate.
Okay, fantastic. So a few housekeeping rules before starting the debate. We all know 7 minutes, 15 seconds speech. I'll only be putting timestamp in the chat, but I'll be looking into it. So don't overtime. Anything after 8 minutes, sorry, 7 minutes, 15 seconds will be counted and will not be counted. And also, most importantly, ask and take PYs. Mention your preferred way to take PYs before starting your speech. And yeah, we are good to go. Best of luck for the round. So without a further ado, you can have the Prime Minister. Here.
Okay. This debate is focused on an imaginary scenario, but it parallels a situation we on Earth have seen an infinite amount of times. Whether it be the oceans or land, species have continually killed each other, and even we have killed and put down one another in the name of power. Therefore, we have very important contextualizations, first of all, about what these species are like. We believe that these Zorgons will likely be very aggressive, as aggression is necessary for survival. 3 layers of analysis here. First of all, innately, we think that power over one another and compete to be the most dominant in their ecosystem. We can see this, for example, in food webs, where animals kill each other, animals fight off of instinct, and this means that it does not matter what level of society you belong to, what type of species you are. Innately, there is a want to be at the top of the food chain and to be at the top of the social pyramid. Now, opposition is going to come and say that if they're intelligent, they would prioritize peace and diplomacy. We think this is not true. Even if a species is intelligent, this makes them only more pernicious in their aggression. In social hierarchies as well, within species, there are dominant and subdominant classes, and we see that as humans have progressed, they have become even more systemic, even more controlled in their exercise of aggression and manipulation, as, for example, in the development of racism. Also, note that the info slide states a resourcefulness. This resourcefulness means that these aliens have likely already reached out to other aliens and have already conquered their resources. This is because there is a limit to development on a single planet. We see this on Earth as well already. We are already nearly reaching the limits of the capacity that Earth can support. So in order to be at a significantly higher level, as the info slide claims, an alien species must have preyed on others. All of this means that as species, All of this means that species, regardless of development, have an innate need to outcompete one another and have competition. This is extremely important because this proves that regardless of development, competition and the urge to outcompete one another already exists. Second of all, what does cross-galaxy technology actually mean? This means that these species are smart and they have been able to talk to us both ways. This means there are implications for how there is already going to be some level of technological advancement for both species. Secondly, this also means that both species have exploited their planet and changed their planet to their liking in order to get these resources, suggesting again that they have probably killed and put down other species in order to gain advantage to their own species. So with all that being said, why should we make the first move? A couple observations about communication. First of all, communication will be slow. Light, the ultimate barrier, the speed limit of all travel, light itself takes 2 years to escape the Oort cloud of our solar system. And forget whatever you might have heard in science fiction movies about wormholes and whatever. No matter how developed our technology is, it is physically impossible to make this any faster. Therefore, miscommunication is extremely likely, and any preparations or attempts at hostility are likely going to be taken, for example, placing weapons on hair trigger alert, even before any real threat arises, because there is simply no time for communication. Therefore, both sides will be thinking that fast action is needed. And therefore, we have to think very critically about what will happen when we take the first move. Note that humans are a relatively smart species, and they know that there are certain risks, so we are likely to create safe spaces for those who are extremely wealthy, powerful, and shelter those who do not wish to fight. Therefore, we think that loss of life on the human side is unlikely to be severe during attack. A second reason for this is that because we will primarily be using weapons of mass destruction, we want to be attacking the entire planet. It doesn't make any sense to be landing onto a planet and doing a land invasion. That's far too old-fashioned and won't be able to create any dent at all. And therefore, we'll probably be using things like nuclear weapons, and these can be unmanned, and there will be very low contribution of human life. So we think that there will be barely any backlash on the floor for governments and countries on Earth. So with that being said, our arguments consist of analysis between two scenarios. First of all, if Zorgons are hostile, and second of all, if Zorgons are actually peaceful and diplomatic. First of all, we look at the case where Zorgons are hostile. This means that they are smarter than us, as the INFOSLIDE says, so we probably don't stand a chance. This means that the only thing that we can do is to try and attack first in order to protect them. And this means that we should try to kill them before they start killing us in ways that we cannot prevent. We will also make a moral argument about what is likely to happen once they have subjugated us, and we claim that this is morally irresponsible for allowing all future generations of humans to lose all liberty and to be completely subject to the manipulation of these aliens. We think this is the greatest harm in the debate. Second of all, note that because we have discovered an alien civilization right outside of our solar system, that is relatively close in the scale of the galaxy, in the scale of the larger universe. This means that aliens are very likely populating the whole rest of the universe quite densely, and this means that it's extremely critical for us to take their technology and resources so that we are capable of dealing with aliens that are very likely to populate the rest of the universe. So for example, we might leave only a couple of these Zorgons remaining so that we are able to learn from them and force them to transfer their technologies to us, but we do not want them to first do the same to us. Secondly, moving back to our characterization of aggression, note that after all, we as humans, we find ways to improve at rapid paces. So even if this were not to happen, and if the Zorgons merely place us below them, they would certainly work to control our species, given our extensive framing earlier. And this means that we should ensure that Zorgons would ensure that we would never replace them at the top of the food chain. This could mean we would end up living in small areas squished next to each other without fresh air, like animals in a farm. It could also mean forcing us to perform in front of an audience, doing all kinds of things that are extremely inhumane towards humans. And this means that Zorgons will ultimately, unless we attack them first and try to remove them from our planet, be manipulating us. And in fact, we think that extinction is very likely as a result of this. Second of all, a principled argument about why it is correct to take the first move. We think that even if we are to fail in the worst case scenario, if everything ends terribly and we still end up in extinction, it is principally correct to act faster, and it is responsible on the part of government, on the part of the human race, because even in the best case where humans first of all, consider the best case where humans win the attack. That means that we have made a move that has saved planet Earth from very likely extinction. But even in the worst case scenario where we lose and go extinct, as I said, in any case, we are merely delaying deaths that will happen when Zorgons try and manipulate us. And we think that if Zorgons eventually end up being able to control all the future generations of humans, this is an infinite harm where they will be able to manipulate and cause unquantifiable harm to all future generations of Earth. Second of all, we think that it's extremely important to preserve the legitimacy of social institutions on our government. This is a separate argument about preserving the practical effect of governments in our world. We think that if we allow humans to see that their existing governments were not able to foresee that aliens exist, and even after they found out about it, were not able to take any concrete action, this will create massive social unrest where people no longer trust their governments and they try to set up alternative governments. This ultimately means that any future attempts at launching attacks, once it becomes clear that Zorgons are hostile, will be much less effective. Therefore, it makes much more sense to be taking the first move, and for all the above reasons, we are very proud to propose.
Awesome, the figure for the time state. Can I have it of the opposition?
Hi, can I make sure I'm audible?
Yes, you are.
Okay, thank you. I'll begin my speech in 3, 2, 1. At the point in which Prop assumes that we will definitely win this war, we will definitely win this war is the point in which Prop loses moral high ground and the battleground in this debate. So a few points of framing for the House. The problem is that there's a perceived threat from the Zorgons, and they are believed to be more intelligent and resourceful than the human race. And the burden of proof for the House today is that Prop needs to prove that immediately attacking is the best for Earth and the space community's security. In opposition, we need to prove that not attacking is the best for Earth and the space community's security. A few rebuttals. Proposition said that Zorgons are aggressive and that they get power over one another because of the competition of food webs to be on top of the food chain and etc. But we believe that this is exactly why they will be peace-loving, right? It's not true that they're going to be aggressive. Prop assumes that everyone wants to be at the top of the food chain, but the fact that it's so unclear as to why the Zorgons are necessarily the apex predator. This means that it is likely that we will be in the competition. So predator-prey is not the only relation in the entire ecosystem. There's so many other relationships other than symbiotic relationships, mutual relationships, and etc. Right? So this means that it's not necessary that the only action that we can take is to attack them, because in our current world, humans have killed each other and fought for power. But in the world today, that there is a common understanding and that there is global peace. So this is the goal that we should work towards. And since the Zorgons are in a similar position where they have built their own civilization, this means that they are also similar to our world in the sense that they are also peace-loving. They will want to establish connections since if they do attack us, right, there's going to be mutual destruction in the sense that there is both of us are going to be at a loss. So which is why the Zorgons aren't necessarily going to be aggressive, right? So opposition also said that we should make the first move because communication is slow and miscommunication is likely. And so we need to take fast action and be the first ones to attack. We believe that first of all, there's no analysis on this. We think that communication could be fast, right? Since our technology is now like so advanced that we can already communicate with these people. It's not necessary that communication is going to be slow, because such as the Starlink in the Russian-Ukrainian war, we think that there's more improvements will be there, and we would be able to make up for the lost time. This means that we don't necessarily think that communication is slow and then miscommunication is likely. And yeah, okay. We also believe that mutually assured destruction is going to have a nuclear and won't. Proposition said that mutually assured destruction is going to have a nuclear effect and won't even affect attack Earth. But this is not true, because at this point in progress and technological development, it's likely that everything happening on the spatial parameters and just outside the solar system, and it's likely that whatever impacts happen between interaction on space and on Earth, that people are likely still going to be able to interact between these worlds, right? But before I go on, yes.
Please understand that the speed of light is a universal barrier, so we're going to assume that space travel can travel near the speed of light. This means that we could send our nuclear weapons close to the speed of light, and the aliens would not see it coming until it was about to destroy their entire planet. This completely destroys mutually assured destruction.
But you need to understand that because technology is so advanced, we think that communication would work if we are able to, if we can do it at the speed of light, then we can establish diplomatic relations. Plus, if we are at the speed of light, right, then they are probably higher up than in their advancement than us. So it means that we will likely die in the first place before we are able to attack them. So that means that instead of attacking, we can actually build diplomatic ties with them, and so we believe that attacking shouldn't be the first option. Okay, so now we'll be moving on to my substantive, which will be on the internal security and progress of our nation, right? Of the Earth, the human race. So this can be analyzed in a game theory framework. So there are two possibilities, two choices, and four results, all of which leads to death. So Zorgons are not aggressive. And why is this likely to be true, right? Assuming that we believe that they are intelligent, at worst, they are on the same par as us in terms of intelligence. There are probably signs that make us think so. The way they speak, the tools they use, the technology they have, and we probably have been growing at have the same growing arc of our schools and thoughts, and probably have similar on the way we experience colonialism and conflicting ideologies such as socialism that provided the basis of submission. Emergence of new peace-loving ideas like how we did in our status quo, right? Under that, at worst, they probably have something that is far beyond our technology, just like how the disparity between third world countries and the United States during the 1950s, in which the US held nuclear monopoly. It's probably similar insofar that they have something like a Death Star or cannon to annihilate us. So if we attack, we are going to be perceived as barbaric aggressors, which gives them so much more justification to attack us. If we were to draw parallels, we can assume that they are opposing schools of thought and leaders exist in Zorgons, in which peace-loving ones temporarily are in power. That creates so much political pressure for them to actually act on us. Then there's so much more likelihood of them to exterminate us, and we will face a Holocaust. Understand, no matter how clever or smart we are, the strategies we employ just cannot win with them. Guerrilla attacks and whatnot that tries to win a war, then there's a power asymmetry, which only works insofar that there's some familiarity of the terrain and the characteristics of the terrain, which will benefit us. The only example they can pull out is similar to how Vietnam won us, won USA, or Mao Zedong won over the nationalists in the Chinese Civil War. The thing is that we just discovered space and we just discovered them. So such benefits cannot essentially benefit us. Moreover, the terrains of space is a vacuum, which means that necessarily we're under current constraints of technology. And it's highly unlikely that we can have the swarm of small melee units of spaceships. Absolute firepower will win and we will probably die. We don't attack, then they don't attack. That reinforces our security for threefold reasons. This sends a message and sets a precedence of no matter how different we are, diplomatic always works. And sending a message to peace-loving ideals are superior. And we are more likely to buy time and have resources to spend our technology. The exchange of technology would probably enforce our level of means of production. For all these reasons, I'm so proud of this proposal.
Then we have the opposition for the final speech. Can I have DPL?
Yep. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Okay. Let me just get my timer ready. So just a quick reminder, verbal POIs, please. When life gives you lemons, you make lemonade. Opposition seems to throw away these lemons to rot, nay, die or become extinct. Proposition strongly supports a stance where the continuation of the species of humanity is valued and happens. Though I like to make a quick clarification before I get into my responses. The only burden we have in today's debate is to prove extinction to be likely for us humans and prove why it's both morally and practically correct for us to attack immediately. So I think that on our side, we definitely have the burden to engage with them in both our best case and their best case scenario, which we have done from the get-go, and I will continue to do so. First, on their response to us, telling us that peacefulness and diplomatic relationships exist. This is very ironic because the LO started her speech by saying that we only care about our best case where we win the attack, right? Then they bring forward the argument that Zorgons are peaceful loving species, that they're peace loving species. This is a really absurd assumption to make. The only mechanism they gave us is that species are deterred from entering war because of death. We know that Zorgons are being similar to us and even smarter than us, right? Both of us civilizations are competitive, which opposition seems to agree with. So in order for the Zorgons to have established themselves at the top of the food chain on their planet, just like we did, they must have killed, wiped out, and controlled other species that competed with them for the power on top of the food chain, right? Talk about peace. We got to this place in our planet because of aggressiveness, right? So we would assume if they were similar species with which both sides of the house agreed with, then they should have done the same. So this is imperative to ensure that the fact that we remain at the top of the food chain is secured. If we are unable to do so, the Zorgons will kill us all to ensure that they are on top of the food chain. So keeping us around below them on the food chain is extremely risky for them. Thus, it is clear that they will make the move and that our narrative is the more believable one and the one to buy. Panel, peacefulness cannot be assumed, but we are going to interact with it anyway to address their best case, right? Their best case that ties can be made. However, we tell you that even when ties can be made, they sour over time, right? We tell you that it is completely impossible for like 10,000 neutral ties to be made and that no one is going to take the first move after establishing a tie, right? And we think that in this case, it is very likely for the Zorgons to be incentivized to sour the tides and attack us because, as established in the INFOSLIDE, they are a species that are highly resourceful. So there is a very clear incentive for them to take advantage of our resources to be on top of the food chain. So we tell you that no matter in their best case or our best case, peacefulness is not the way to go because it's too risky. Therefore, to ensure that our species do not become endangered and extinct, it is crucial that we attack them upon first arrival. Now, on their point on their substantive on how we put lives at risk, so they like to be safe. They tell us that it's making us humans look barbaric and it's not peaceful at all, which is a wrong narrative to paint for our civilization. Firstly, they have no guarantee whatsoever that the Zorgons are going through the same things as us, right? They opposition does not cannot just assume that the Zorgons like value peace as much as us and that they are so incentivized to keep diplomatic ties with us, right? I would argue that proposition is the only side of the house where you support these lives and the only side of the house where you can even see some sort of power and success for our civilization. This is for two reasons. One, opposition's alternative is a world where people do nothing and let these ties develop in a wrong way. And secondly, some sort of action, some sort of defensive mindset on our side is at least better than none or even worse, closing the ties between these two
Point.
civilizations. No, thank you, which PM has already established to be deadly. And even if we take their best case that we concede to the risk of going extinct existing, we think that the risk is worth it and principally correct to take, right? Opposition puts our lives at risk for a longer time frame. This is harmful because it's basically just delaying
Point.
death. It has no exclusiveness. No, thank you. So now on the extension of how neutral ties cannot exist, but before that, I'll take your point.
What is the correlation between defending ourselves and immediately attacking them? You know, it sounds absurd that you say that we are defending ourselves when we are literally initiating the attack, right? It's unclear as to why this is exclusive.
We have already established the likelihood of the narrative that the Zorgons are going to attack us either way, right? So we think that not only is it principally justified for us to have this sort of take this action that is defending our civilization, even if in the worst case scenario we lose, it is supposed to, the government should have the obligation to take this move because it is principally justified and that the narrative of them attacking us is very likely. Now, on my extension on how neutral ties cannot exist, RPM has already characterized and set up an observation on the food web right? In the wild, species are often complete for limited natural resources such as food and water, right? And this causes conflict because it's impossible to maintain neutral tides in any sort of food webs, right? And we think for these interactions create like inherent tensions that make it difficult to like maintain any neutral connection. So this is also a layer response to how they say that tides can be established, because even if they were established, there's always going to be evolutionary pressures, right? This leads to like there's always going to be differences between the two civilizations, and we have seen from our own civilizations that differences causes conflict, right? So not only is this causing conflict within our own civilization, it's basically causing like intergalactic conflicts, which we cannot imagine how extreme this could be, right? And so we think that with so much social unrest, with so much high likelihood of these tensions and these conflicts existing, even in their best case scenario of the tides being established, this risk is not a risk that we should take for humanity. So, Judge, having proven that this action is morally and principally justified, and that the practical benefits exist only exclusively on a government bench, we believe that we are never so proud to propose.
All right, then the speaker for the final speech. Can I have Diego?
Hi, can I check if I'm visible and audible?
Yes and yes.
Okay. Give me a second. Verbal POIs, please. I'll begin my speech in 3, 2, 1. 3 things I'd like to point out as to why proposition has already lost this debate. Firstly, they failed to understand what the nature of Zorgons really look like, right? Proposition told you that they're always going to be aggressive, they're always going to want to compete with humans for the top of the food chain, and that they're similar to what humans think. We told you what our characterization is and why it's more likely, right? Precisely because Zorgons are similar to us, they'll be more willing to build peaceful relations. So why is this so? Let's draw a parallel to what our current world looks like, right? Humans have already killed each other and engaged in so many instances of war for power based on what's happened in history, but clearly in the world today, there's a common understanding that global peace is a goal to work towards, right? This is shown by the existence of international organizations like the UN that already help to mitigate these conflicts. What this means is that Zorgons are likely to want to build peace because of the fact that they don't actually want to continue war, especially not on such a large scale in its base community. Secondly, we told you that what's going to happen on their side of the house is that it's likely for mutually assured destruction to happen. And here I'd like to point out a contradiction in Proposition's case, right? They tell us that miscommunication is likely to happen because for some reason the speed of light serves as a barrier, and that but then they also come and tell us about how nuclear attacks are going to happen at the speed of light, and that humans are going to be able to kill them immediately right off the get-go, right? So we tell you that this is a contradiction, and the Proposition actually needs to get right whether or not technology is going to be fast or slow in their world. But since they haven't, what my first speaker already told you that has not received engagement is that it's likely that these people are not actually going. It's likely that these people. It's likely that our world is going to suffer mutually assured destruction at the point in which both sides actually have nuclear weapons or they have some extremely advanced form of weaponry. Right. This means that both sides are actually going to suffer and they're both going to kill the human species, which I'll talk more about in my rebuttals. Thirdly, on the strategy of what Proposition has been telling about, at the point in which they don't even establish the exclusivity of how immediately attacking them is what their side pushes for, they've already lost this debate. The entire thing about how it's important to be at the top of the food chain does not happen exclusively when it's immediate, right? They only tell us that it's necessary for us to kill them, but we think that either way, this can happen on outside the house, right? What we want to fight for is that immediately when we establish interactions with them, we want to build some kind of diplomatic relations, right? We think that only in the worst case, if at some point in the future we realize that we actually conflict, then if conflict happens, then sure, it's a natural thing. There's nothing you can do about that, right? But we don't see how it's exclusive on their side of the house that it's going to be immediate, right? So at worst, our side suffers in the short term, but we think that ultimately we still haven't heard much analysis coming from Proposition. So a couple of rebuttals then. Next, they come and tell us about how extinction is likely and that it's morally and practically correct to attack. Firstly, we tell you that this is not morally correct at all, right? As I've already proved, there's going to be an extent of nuclear destruction. There's going to be an extent where people are actually going to suffer, right? it's going to actually affect people on Earth way more than it's going to affect like the global leaders or anybody in charge of this. So we think that from the get-go, it's already morally incorrect because you're killing the people on Earth. Next, they come and tell us about how ties are going to sour over time and that conflict is inevitable. We tell you that it's morally wrong to assume that just because we are different, just because humans are different from Zorgons, right? That means that they're going to fight immediately, right? We tell you that this is not the case. Just because we're different species means that doesn't mean anything, right? It just means that sure, we have different outlooks, we have different lives. But we think that even if we're charitable and we actually accept this argument, right? Exactly because it's going to sour over time, if there is such a need to even fight in the future, it's better to fight when we are better off with technology, when we're more developed and we're more advanced, right? At least having the attempt to build ties, we
What?
think, is still better on our side of the house. No, thank you. Last rebuttal then. They come out and tell us about how there's always going to be differences and there's a conflict of interest, for example, when they're searching for like materials or something like that, right? We tell you that there's no analysis or no world building on their side to tell us why the needs are necessarily different in the first place, right? We don't really know what this means. But even if this is true, we think that this doesn't justify why it's exclusively immediately to have to want to attack these people. But now, just forwarding what my first speakers already said, right? We tell you that many alien civilizations already exist throughout the universe. They could be both silent, both hostile, but they might want to like maintain their undetectability for fear of being destroyed by other beings, right? So them being at the top of the food chain in the planet does not mean that they're actually top of the whole universal food chain. But we think that when proposition wants to initiate war, it basically creates so much noise across the entire spatial community that both planets will eventually reveal themselves to the entirety of the universe. And we think that because we've already accepted the premise that our higher beings might be aggressive, since there's so many different kinds of beings that we don't know, they will want to seize the chance to attack both of us, right? And we think that in that situation, mutually assured destruction is likely to happen. People are more likely to die. And this is crucially important because even if they are aggressive to survive and they want to protect their interests, they probably will become extinct at some point in time. Before I'm going to my substantive, I'll take a POI.
Why is it correct for us to prolong the suffering into the future and the risk into the future of an attack?
Look, we're telling you that this is going to happen in an extremely unlikely scenario, right? It's not likely that after you build diplomatic relations, somehow it's going to sour because there's simply no analysis from your side to back it up. But we're telling you that in some kind of world where that actually happens, then sure, we're willing to accept it, right? But your side still hasn't proved to us why exclusively immediate attack is necessary. So I'm on to my substantive on how we're better able to preserve the security and stability for the entire universe, right? So we tell you that there are two key impacts of this substantive. Firstly, on the progress as a civilization on Earth. When we see diplomatic relations being built with these Zorgons, right from the get-go when we establish contact with them, right? This allows for more interactions to learn about the planet, to gain new information about, for example, the solar system or other planets, and therefore be able to share technology, right? This means that humans are actually able to build, to fulfill the purpose of space exploration and science in the first place, because we're able to learn more about the world around us, and we're better able to, for example, build infrastructure or make more progress on Earth itself, and ultimately benefits humans' own progress, right? Second impact then, on how we're better able to preserve security and the stability of the whole world. We think that when we engage in diplomatic relations, it sends a message to the wider community that humans on Earth are peace-loving and they don't actually want to engage in war, right? This means that there's a high chance for us to build alliances and lay low rather than actually attack other species where we don't even know, right? And it's already established earlier, it's likely that there are other higher and more intelligent beings that also exist, which increases the likelihood of them wanting to cooperate. Therefore, more benefits, right? The impact is clear. We want to build more peaceful relations, like for example, having globalization on a wider scale, where we have more interconnectedness, mutual relations, and the sharing of economies, knowledge, or technology. Let me paint to you what very quickly what proposition's world looks like, right? What we think it looks like is one where the space community becomes very war-oriented and constantly having hostile relations. Note here that it's safe to assume that this is the first interaction between species of any kinds of different planets working together, and therefore, if the first interaction that we have is one where humans wage war on Zorgons, it sends a message to the entire space community that number one, humans are violent, threatening, and extremely unfriendly, and number two, humans are a species worth attacking because they're a target, they render a security threat. So we think that it's likely on their side of the house that they're going to endanger the people on Earth and Zorgons even more because they're encouraging the space community and Zorgons to come and attack humans even after the initial attack, and therefore, because of these reasons, never been proud to oppose.
Other than the speaker, can I have goblet?
Okay. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. If everyone can hear me, my time will start in 3, 2, 1. So today in this speech, I'll talk about many of the main clashes that we see in today's debate and tell you why I think proposition wins on these clashes. But before I start my clash analysis, I'd like to clear up the characterization of Zorgons. So the entire narrative of opposition is the idea that peace-loving species is based on the assumption that they fear death, and so they don't want to die, and so they will be peaceful to us because they don't want to wage war. And I think firstly that's a logical fallacy because just because they fear war, it doesn't mean that there's a greater good, right? And also I would argue that things such as fearing death internally as a species is the idea that if I fear death, they would be more likely to launch attacks at us so that we don't have the chance of killing them throughout the course of this process, right? So we think that what opposition tells us is false, right? We don't see how the idea of having of Zorgons being peaceful is likely, right? Firstly, they tell us that Zorgons are likely to fear death, but if the Zorgons were likely to fear death on the proposition, we tell you that if they're likely to fear death, it is more likely that they will want to kill us so that we don't have a chance to kill them back, right? Because they fear death, according to what opposition says. So we don't see how just because they are afraid of death, that they're more likely to establish diplomatic relations, right? As the info slide stated, these Zorgons are very smart creatures, and they know that there's a likelihood that when we establish diplomatic relations, that humans could have a likelihood of turning on them, right? So then for them, it is much more likely for them to just kill us all or put us under their control, right? Because they know that we could turn on them, and so in order for that to not happen, it would be much safer to just kill us so that they don't actually die, right? So we don't see on the proposition side how it is more likely that these Zorgons will actually choose to establish diplomatic relations when there is the chance of having the humans turn on them and try to kill them, right? And in this idea, I would also like to establish the idea that humans, although we're not as smart as the Zorgons, we're not dumb either, right? So there is a likelihood that we could kill them. It's just that there's a much smaller likelihood that we would kill all of them in one blow, and it would also take time for us to build that kind of technology, right? So we tell you that the Zorgons would find it much safer to go with plan A, which is the idea of just killing the humans or putting us under our control, as our prime minister has already established, right? The idea of the food chain, and the idea that the Zorgons will want to either, in order to not die, like opposition has told us, one, they will try to kill us all, and because if we can create, as their first speaker told us, right, if we can create technology at the speed of lightning, right, no, at the speed of light, right? That means the Zorgons can create technology that is even faster, which means that it would be way easier for the Zorgons to kill all of us before we even realize. So it is more likely to take for the Zorgons to just kill us or put us under control so that they don't die. So on the speed of technology, we said technology is bound by the speed of light. This means that it will take 2 years for anything to travel from Earth to the Zorgons. So communication looks like receiving one message every 4 years, since we have to, we send a message and they have to send a message back. But nuclear weapons traveling at the speed of light wouldn't be perceived by either side until they're able to reach you, giving no time to respond because of how fast the speed of light means. This means mutually assured destruction is impossible unless you can respond to a nuclear threat in seconds. And this is what would also lead to the escalation of conflict. Even if they are peaceful and want to establish symbiotic cooperative relationships, this we will still look like humans doing the slave work for the Zorgons. We will still become a species of the slaves bred by Zorgons, unable to escape under threat of death. Humans are likely to try to gain more power. Even if human governments try to prevent conflict, individuals are likely to engage in conflict. We think any small spark will explode into an interspecies war because once Zorgons understand how little intelligence and resources we have to contribute, they will be able to wipe us out. As a general military strategy, when one is small and weak, to survive, you must intimidate. This is not just a question of who could win in a fair battle. We are acting on the benefit of surprise. We're capable of wiping out an Earth-sized species many times over with existing nuclear arsenals. If we intimidate them, they will be much less likely to try to exert manipulative control or launch an invasion in the future. On the other hand, if we don't attack, humans will lose trust in existing governments, which because these governments show that they are incapable of anticipating an attack or acting or putting together the necessary resources to protect the humans, right? And this leads to social unrest and makes human future conflicts impossible to organize because the people don't trust the government and don't trust that the government is making the right decision, right? So therefore we believe that we win on the clash of protecting the humans, right? We tell you that it is simply unlikely. It is much more likely that the Zorgons choose to attack us and try to attack us and kill us so that they don't have to be killed when we try to launch an attack, right? As I told you before, like with the nuclear technology, you can't see stuff that is going at the speed of light, right? So if we are launching an attack, the Zorgons would never be able to respond at the same respond accordingly, right? So it would be a much safer plan for them to just kill us all, right? And so we don't see on the proposition side how opposition story of how they'll communicate with us diplomatically would be possible when they're running the risk of killing all their whole entire species, right? And also with the idea of social unrest, if they are incapable of saving their species would be their species would be wiped out, and we don't think that they would be willing to run this risk, right? So we think that we win on this clash, and therefore we're proud to propose to the motion. Thank you.
Then the speaker can I have upload.
Can I check if I'm audible and visible?
Yes, you are.
All right, thank you so much. Let me start my timer. Once again, verbal POIs, please. My speech is going to start in 3, 2, 1. Panel, this debate has become a deadlock in which we cannot agree on what Zorgons are like. So let me remind you of the BOPs of each side. Firstly, proposition needs to prove that we must immediately attack like now, in order for us to protect our security and progress of us as a civilization. But what the burden of proof of opposition, or what opposition solely needs to prove, is just that we don't need to attack first. We don't need to attack at this particular moment, which gives us more leeway in terms of determining whether or not we want to attack in the future or we would not attack after all, right? But let's just assume, and this leads us on into the two clashes in today's debate. Who wins the war and what happens after? Firstly, on who wins the war. Understand this is crucially important because proposition has been extremely uncharitable and wants to hammer home the idea that Zorgons are extremely aggressive and are driven by self-interest and aggressive tendencies. The thing is, they have not actually engaged with our analysis that we have brought down consistently from opposition first speaker to now, in which we have told you two structural reasons as to why this is true, in which they probably have similar intersectionalities in terms of their experiences to grow as a civilization, or even if not, right, them being more intelligent just means that it's extremely easy for them to recognize that peace and security is something that is not mutually exclusive, and peace is just something that is just far better. That is some absolute positive knowledge that everyone would recognize. In which, when they have never engaged us on the extension, on the possibility of these Zorgons are going to be peace-loving insofar, right? That means that in those four possibilities, we have already won two, in which we tell you that if they are peace-loving and we do not attack, we are probably going to be able to establish diplomatic relations. We are probably going to be able to depend on each other and improve as a whole. But even if we don't, right, if so we attack, right, that means that we are going to have bad reputation. But here is the important analysis that I'm going to give you. If we assume that Zorgons are going to be aggressive, which is the best case, right, and we attack immediately and we win, which is unlikely, but never mind, let's just assume that best case scenario. And on our side, Zorgons are aggressive and we wasted so much diplomatic resources and so much communication resources to just reach a dead end, and we try to attack later, right? Understand this is important because it is extremely unlikely as to they have never proven us the exclusivity of attacking them now to lead us to victory, right? In which when they tell us that it is probably assumed that we can put up a good fight with them in current scenarios, it's unclear as to if we establish diplomatic relations with them and we experience a longer time, right, in which we are able to buy more time to develop our arsenal, to develop more nuclear weapons in the future, it's extremely unlikely as to why we cannot win that war in the future. It's extremely unclear as to why there is an urgency to attack now. But let me just engage on their sole mechanism as to how they think that we need to have some kind of key position in the space in order for us to win them, right? Otherwise, the Zorgons would just take over our positions and we will die. It's unclear as to why this is a sole determining factor as to how we can win the war. We just think that it's unclear, right? In which when you tell us that when they tell us that the positions of how you put your troops are much more important than the capabilities of your nuclear arsenal or the strategies that you employ, right? We just don't think that is something that is we just think that it's something that is extremely hard to buy in the first place. More importantly, right, we think that it's extremely unclear as to why we would even win the war in the first place. Understand that we have just established communications with them as per how my first speaker and my second speaker has consistently talk about this, right? We think that when we do not even have the key information of what their capabilities and their skills are like, it's extremely abhorrent and it's extremely careless for us to just attack in the first place, right? Understand there are two possible considerations that proposition does not want to engage with, right? Firstly, they don't understand that there are other higher beings out there. While they have agreed in their characterization, they have never derived utility from this. And this is why opposition gives you something that's important later. We tell you that because of how there might be other higher beings here, we use the dark forest hypothesis to tell you that, in fact, if we actively initiate attacks with them, right, what happens is that we are going to cause a lot of noise. What are these kind of noise? This means that our military capabilities, in terms of the numbers of our nuclear arsenals, the size of our battleships, the capabilities of our Death Star or our laser cannons, will be exposed to the entirety of the galactic community as with them, right? That means that there might be other aggressive higher beings out there that want to attack us. If we were to follow down the line, right, if we were to follow down proposition's line of analysis, insofar that Zorgons and every other higher species being are going to be aggressive, it's far more likely that all of the other aggressive higher alien beings will just come and attack us. It's unclear as to why we'll win the war in the future. But not just that, right? Understand that there is a web of alliances across the galactic community. This is something that's prevalent in our world, prevalent in their world, and prevalent in the whole galactic community. Insofar as we know that there might be someone like USA, which consistently wants to push for manifest destiny and cares a lot about the Zorgons, or there might just be other allies that will help the Zorgons in this war. It's just extremely unclear as to how we were ever able to win this war, this being the main substantive push from proposition, and them not being able to win this clash already means that they automatically lose the debate. And before I move on, any POIs?
Our point about social unrest responded to why we need to act now.
Okay, I'm going to engage on social unrest, right? They tell us that there are social unrest and sufferings now in our world. It's extremely unclear. They've never given us any kind of mechanism. The only mechanism they've given us is some kind of paranoia. Understand this, how extremely abhorrent, and this leads me on to my second clash on what happens to the galaxy then, right? Understand that insofar as they tell us there are sufferings, there are unrest, right? And they tell us the only way that we can resolve these sufferings and unrest is violence. This sounds exactly trigger warning. This sounds exactly similar to Hitler's Nazi Germany, right? In which they tell us that we need Lebensraum, we need living space. There's some kind of threat, the Jewish threat or the Zorgon threat that tries to bring down our whole Aryan race or the humanity race, right? This means that they are going to reinforce much more aggressive messages as what have been analyzed by my second speaker, insofar as they tell us that violence is the only way, violence is the superior way to resolve conflicts. That means that we are going to be able to, this just fits into the idea, the notion that we accept that violence is something that's acceptable. There's going to be much more uprisings if there's so much conflict and so much discord in our domestic world. It's much more likely that people are going to rise up in armed rebellions and try to bring down the whole government, and that is symmetrical on both sides. Even so, right, we think that we are going to be internationally condemned by the galactic community. We are not going to be able to establish diplomatic relations with other people, which leads to the destruction of us in the future. Insofar that we win these two clashes, we win the debate. So proud to oppose.
Gazi, if you're trying to say anything, we can't hear you.
On the opposition reply, am I audible and visible?
You are, but yeah.
Okay. Let me set up my timer. Okay, I'll begin my speech in 3, 2, 1. At the point in which proposition's entire case is built on the fact that they want to attack and not that they want to attack immediately, they've already lost this debate. My past few speakers have already told you how proposition has not really provided any mechanism as to why it's specifically crucial for humans to attack Zorgons the moment they establish contact. I'll hammer home this idea through my reply speech today. So a couple of things I want to deal with. First, let's look at what proposition's best case looks like and what our worst case looks like. Let's assume their world is one where Zorgons actually want to fight humans out of competition and that humans actually win out of fighting them, right? Because this is what the best world wants to fight for. We tell you that what happens in the long term is that they're going to send a message to the rest of the species that exist in the entire galaxy. The humans on Earth are dangerous, right? What this does is that it puts Earth in an extremely dangerous position because there are species out there that we might not even know the existence of that will want to attack humans. And we think that at this point in time, it's Earth is going to be in a more dangerous position than they were if they hadn't attacked, right? But more than that, this creates the possibility that Zorgons will actually want to fight back in the future, right? We think that this is likely to happen because we can see countries actually doing this in the world right now, right? Once one country attacks, the other will reciprocate and respond with a bigger fight, even if it happens a few years down the road, right? So what we think Proposition's best world does is it set the stage for a more severe fight, whether it be with Zorgons or other species in the future, right? So let's compare this to what our worst case looks like. We think that our worst case is one where we actually cooperate with them and end up being attacked because they actually don't want to cooperate with us, right? So a couple of responses we've already provided for this. Number one, it's likely that the impact of what proposition wants to push forward is actually very limited, right? Humans have the capabilities to react and they actually can fight back because they're already very developed. It's safe to assume that humans are already very developed at this point in time. Sure, proposition can go about their way talking about how the speed of light is going to be some kind of barrier, but they still haven't really clarified what their characterization is as to whether miscommunication is going to happen or whether technology is actually really fast. So we don't think that analysis even stands at this point in the debate. But even if we accept that at some point we are attacked, right, we still think we're better off in our world because at least we have more time to develop the technology and develop the arsenal of weapons to even combat these kind of future fights, right? We think it's worse on their side because at this point we haven't at this point where you're immediately responding, humans probably haven't developed a large arsenal of military anyway, right? So that's why we've already made it clear that our world is still better at the end of this debate. But a couple of flaws that I'd like to deal with in their case, right? We think that number one, they've been extremely uncharitable in their characterization of Zorgons, right? They're not engaging with our substantives and our premises that Zorgons have the potential to be peace-loving species, right? We've already provided you with extensive characterization as to why this is likely, but we tell you that they haven't actually responded on this. So what has our side told you then? We engaged in both possibilities of Zorgons being peace-loving and want the possibility of them to be peace-loving or wanting war, right? My entire first speaker substantive talked to you about this, right? But more than that, we think that we haven't really heard exclusive benefits coming from their side of the house, nor have they really painted what their work would look like in the long term. But we think that what the entire push is about is on the characterization of Zorgons, right? And how they always want to be at the top of the food chain, killing people and wanting to kill humans, right? But we told you that this is unlikely to happen because what we think the ending is going to look like is that if we attack immediately, we're going to die. If we don't attack immediately, we're still going to die. So we don't really think that proposition's entire end goal is even clear in the first place, right? But let's just accept that that's somehow not the biggest push, and they want to talk about people, right? They peel at my previous speaker on how social unrest is the problem, but and then somehow violent fighting is the way. We tell you that this is not true. It's unclear why social unrest towards other species in the world exists on proposition side. But even if it does, we think that we're still better able to improve to fix this problem of social unrest on our side of the house, because number one, we're better able to improve the confidence of the people in their global leaders and in their governments to even deal with these problems when you build diplomatic ties, right? But number two, we're also able to have some kind of exclusive benefit at the end of this debate, where we're able to have more progress, better technology, and better weapons on our side of the house. And therefore, I've never been proud to oppose. Thank you.
I was on the speaker for the final speech. Can I have Cobb reply? Gob reply.
Yes, sorry. Okay. The opposition side claims that we don't recognize their case of peaceful Zorgons. Our answer is that even in that case, the opposition ends up being pawns of the Zorgons, happily wiping away at their shoes for fear of dying. There is no dignity, no rights, and before we know it, checkmate, humanity lost. You might think this is a better outcome than extinction. However, we would disagree, because this is, in fact, a permanent delay of the possibility of extinction, a permanent indefinite for all future generations reduction in the rights of Zorgons, in the rights of humans, and there is still the possibility, and we think it is extremely likely that Zorgons will kill us once they realize that we have nothing more to contribute. Therefore, we think the opposition is maximizing the harm rather than minimizing it. Secondly, we do not say that violence is the answer to everything. It is just that we are saying it is the best solution here, and we think that we should fight on when we can, and ensure that when we put a fight, we can prevent suffering for humans in both cases. The worst case is that both species die, but the best case is that only the Zorgons die. And so here I'd like to represent our analysis of Zorgons' attitudes. 3 points. First of all, Zorgons will probably be prepared for any hostility. This is because, as we explained, they keep being confused about what we mean by the speed of light. We're saying that everything will be done at the speed of light. That means communication is very slow, because light has to travel all the way there and back. But nuclear weapons will be very fast, because you can only see a nuclear weapon appearing when it is close enough away from you that light can actually travel to you. And that means mutually assured destruction does not work. They have not responded to this, probably because they didn't understand the argument, unfortunately, but nevertheless that means that their whole idea about mutually assured destruction does not work. Second of all, on the Zorgons' attitudes, Zorgons will want to attack sooner rather than later, exactly like us, because they are more intelligent than us. Over time, our capabilities of the two species will merge to the average, which means that we will become more formidable opponents, and therefore Zorgons want to act before that happens. Thirdly, even if they are unsure how capable exactly we are, they are withholding from immediate attack, just as the op bench is, because they are unsure of our capabilities. By intimidating them psychologically, we have more manipulative power over them. We are the only side that actually managed to increase the bargaining power of humans beyond what already exists, because they are less likely to return an attack if we show them that we are capable of using nuclear weapons to destroy an entire planet, and they would not want to risk that before knowing more. And secondly, even in the case where they establish peace, this is further engaging with their best case. Even if they seek peace after our initial attack, we can still use our display of power to ask for better terms for humans, and this is exactly what we think the best military strategy is. Second of all, about the response to the social unrest argument, I was constantly pestering for a POI in the third speaker because I really hoped that it would give a better response to this, despite it already being so late in the third speech. However, their only response is no mechanism. Here is our mechanism of what we explained in the first and second speeches. If humans see that their government is playing wait and see whilst mounting evidence suggests that Zorgons are hyper-intelligent, political support for human governments wanes, whether or not that government later on wants to pursue a policy of peace or war. So this explains exactly why we need to attack now, immediately, as soon as possible, before fear and before the realization of extinction comes and destroys all political commitment of humans. In fact, we think that the uncertainty is a good thing. It means that there is likely to be much more support for pursuing a concrete policy, at least at this stage. This means that the opposition bench has not responded to the fact that such things as fearing death internally as a species is arguably much worse for the species, and hence why they should attack. Additionally, they have not engaged in why it is the dignity of infinite future lives that would be stripped away, which was brought up by both PM and DPM again. So a couple critical issues that stand still at the end of the debate. First of all is the probability of peace. I think we have provided multiple lines of reasoning, even dealing with their best case, and I do not understand why the opposition whip told us that we have never engaged with that best case. Secondly, but even as the last speaker, we're still going to be charitable and bring back the analysis on even if we lose to the Zorgons and why this is justified. I think this is a principle that was completely dropped by the opposition as well, and that alone should lose the debate. We provided an analysis on why this action of immediately active attacking is justified, and so we should not be blinded by the DLO and OP reply when they say that we never defended why immediate attack is necessary. On the contrary, we have been doing that from the start, and because neither side is able to react if attacked, this is why we need to attack immediately before they start attacking. Indeed, we are the only side that actually provided you panel with a comparison of the likelihood of both narratives. In the best case, we are using the advantage that we have right now of Zorgons' uncertainty of the failure of mutually assured in order to get the best possible chance of surviving, so that even if extinction eventually happens, we are doing the principally correct thing. And so even if we buy their whole case, we cannot that cannot buy them a victory because they are unable to justify what happens in the case where they delay indefinitely into the future. For all above reasons, we are very proud to propose, and it was a clear gov ballot.
I'll hand the speaker for the speech, and I thank everyone for the debate. This is the final, so result will not be announced immediately. Let Orcom will tell you guys when to come back. And my panel, please join me in probably breakout room 3. I'll be there.